Most people between the ages of 55 and 70 spend almost all their time focused on one thing for retirement, just simply growing their investments. While investments absolutely matter, some of the biggest retirement decisions during this phase of life could actually have very little to do with just investment returns. It may have more to do with things like taxes, social security timing, your withdrawal strategy, healthcare decisions, and how the income gets structured once your paychecks stop. Now, the reason this matters so much is because the years between 55 and 70 create planning opportunities that may not exist later in retirement. If those opportunities are missed, people can unintentionally create problems that are very difficult to reverse later on. These could be things such as unnecessary large future tax bills that are likely going to catch up later when required distributions begin, perhaps higher Medicare premiums, inefficient withdrawal strategy, or putting too much pressure on the portfolio too early in retirement. So, in today's video, I want to walk you through 6 integrated retirement planning strategies that I'd personally pay close attention to if I were between 55 and 70 years old right now. I don't want this to be just generic advice, but some practical planning decisions that can materially impact your retirement over the next 20 or 30 years. If you'd like help applying these strategies to your own situation, there's a link in the description where you can schedule a call with our team at Cornerstone Wealth Planning. So let's begin. Strategy number 1, figure out what your portfolio actually needs to do for you in retirement. One of the biggest mistakes people make heading into retirement is assuming their account balance tells them whether they're ready or not. But in reality, two retirees with the exact same portfolio can have completely different outcomes. You may ask why, because what matters isn't just how much you have, it's how much your portfolio needs to produce in income and overall gains for you to sustain your long-term retirement. For example, somebody with, let's say, $1.5 million who only needs an extra $40,000 per year from their investments is in a very different position than somebody who has $250,000 and needs that same distribution from that same portfolio. But many people never actually calculate this sort of key figure. They may know their balances, but they don't really understand what is their income gap. So before making major retirement decisions, I would first figure out a few things. Number 1, what does retirement realistically cost for you? Number 2, what guaranteed income sources will exist to help offset those expenses? And then number 3, how much pressure we placed each year on distributions from your portfolio each year going forward in retirement? Because once you know these numbers, a lot of other decisions will become much clearer. So things overall like retirement timing, withdrawal strategy, investment risk that you should take, and the social security planning strategy that makes the most sense between you and perhaps your spouse, all this becomes easier to evaluate once you understand what your assets actually need to do for you in retirement. So strategy number 2, please don't waste the low tax window. One thing many retirees don't realize is that until it's too late, that in retirement can temporarily create a very valuable tax planning window. Now, this often occurs during the years after someone retires, but before required minimum distributions begin in the mid-70s for most folks. And for many people, taxable income during this period is actually lower now than it may be at that point in retirement. So why does this really matter? Because lower income years can create opportunity for things like Roth conversions, strategic IRA withdrawals, capital gains management, and tax bracket optimization. Most retirees don't proactively use this window. Instead, they continue to defer taxes without realizing they may be creating larger tax problems later on. Then eventually, required distributions begin, Social Security becomes more taxable, Medicare premiums may also increase due to IRMA, and taxable income rises significantly, putting them into higher tax rates. Now, we see this happen all the time with retirees who did an excellent job saving, but never built a long-term distribution strategy around how the money would actually eventually come out of their retirement plans. And this is exactly where retirement planning becomes much more than simply managing investments. Sometimes the biggest financial improvement has nothing to do with actual returns. It comes from creating a more efficient tax structure over time. Brings us to strategy number 3. Let's stop thinking of Social Security just as an income decision. A lot of people think Social Security is simply a question of, should I take it as early as possible, full retirement age, or wait until age 70? But the real impact of this decision usually goes much deeper than that because Social Security affects other parts of the retirement plan as well. For example, if somebody delays benefits, where will the income come from in the meantime while they wait on their Social Security? Will it come from the portfolio withdrawals? If so, what accounts will be used to fund those needs? What's that do to taxes? Could it create opportunities for more Roth conversions? What impact does it have on a surviving spouse later? These are the types of questions that many simplified Social Security analysis really never address. This is why there usually is not a universal best claiming strategy. For some retirees, delaying benefits absolutely makes sense. For others, taking them a little bit earlier for retirement age may actually create more flexibility elsewhere in their overall plan. The important thing is understanding that this decision affects much more than just Social Security check itself. This brings us to strategy number 4. Let's build a withdrawal system before markets get volatile. One mistake many retirees make is withdrawing money somewhat randomly, depending upon what's happening in the markets at a certain time. The problem with that approach is that during market declines, you can be forced to make unnecessary sales from long-term investments at exactly the wrong time. This is one reason why retirement distribution planning matters so much, especially once those paychecks stop. Because retirement isn't just about growing assets anymore. Now the portfolio has to do a really key job in retirement. Generate income or provide gains that allow you to have income reliably while still maintaining enough long-term growth to beat inflation and support your lifestyle in the future. And one way many retirees create more stability is by organizing their assets intentionally. For example, they may use something like a bucket strategy. They have short-term reserves for near-term spending needs, intermediate items there that are saved and used as assets for stability and income, and longer term assets that are more for growth and for future needs. Now, obviously, the exact structure will vary from person to person, but the goal is reducing the likelihood that short term market volatility forces bad long term decisions. And honestly, the emotional side of this matters more than most people think or expect, because even good retirement plans can break if fear causes panic during the wrong market environment. If you want help building a personalized retirement income and withdrawal strategy, you can click the link in the description to schedule a free call with our team. Now let's keep going and move on to strategy number 5. Let's understand how healthcare and income affect each other. Healthcare is one of those retirement expenses that many people underestimate because the costs often increase gradually, but they do so over time. What surprises many retirees is how closely healthcare costs can connect to income planning. So, for example, Medicare premiums are partially tied to your income, which means large withdrawals, Roth conversions, or any other spikes in your overall modified adjusted gross income can sometimes increase Medicare costs. Now, that doesn't mean these strategies are automatically bad decisions. Often they still can make a lot of sense for most folks, but these are exactly the kinds of trade-offs that should be evaluated ahead of time. The same thing applies to things like long-term care planning, supplemental coverage decisions, and other items such as dealing with healthcare inflation. These aren't isolated decisions. They can directly affect retirement cash flow for years to come, which is why healthcare planning tends to work best when decisions are made proactive, not reactive. So strategy number 6, let's make retirement simpler as we get older. One thing I've noticed over the years is that many retirees eventually reach a point they no longer want as much complexity. They maybe don't want a dozen of accounts over there. They don't want complicated withdrawal decisions over here. They don't want disorganized estate documents or a financial system that only one of them between the spouses actually understands. What they want, what they would desire is simplicity, clarity, and confidence that everything will continue as expected if something were to happen to them. That's why estate planning is about much more than just having some documents in place. It's also about making sure your financial life is organized in a way that becomes easier to manage over time. Now, it's very important that you look at things like updating your beneficiaries, simplifying account structures if possible, coordinating those accounts properly, and making sure family members know exactly where things are, and they can become incredibly important later in retirement, especially things like health situations changing, one spouse becoming more responsible for the financial decisions, and earlier things that we addressed, that the easier retirement tends to feel later on. At the end of the day, the years between ages 55 and 70 are some of the most important retirement planning years that you'll ever have, because decisions made during this period can affect so many things: future taxes, retirement income, healthcare costs, portfolio flexibility, and long term financial stability, not just today, but for decades afterwards. And unfortunately, many people don't realize how important this planning window is until it is too late. It's exactly when we help clients navigate these sort of decisions at Cornerstone Wealth Planning. Not just investment management, but retirement income planning, long term tax strategy, Social Security decisions, healthcare coordination, and long term retirement planning as one whole integrated system. So, if you'd like help building a retirement strategy around your specific situation, then I ask you to please click the link in the description to schedule a free call with our team. Because retirement planning becomes much more effective once you stop looking at decisions individually, you start understanding how they affect each other over time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.